Hello class, this is your instructor Miss Birchfield, and in this lesson we're going to discuss multiplying polynomials, going and multiplying polynomials using the rules for the product rule, where when we multiply like bases we will add exponents. The previous lesson that you viewed, we talked about a polynomial and we added and subtracted polynomials. Now we're going to talk about multiplying. So the first two examples, we're going to multiply polynomials using the distributive property. In this example, we have a monomial times a trinomial. And what we will do is distribute the monomial, which is 2x squared. We're going to distribute it to each term in our trinomial by multiplying. And when we multiply, we're going to get 2 times 3, which is 6. X squared times x squared would be x to the 4th. Now we're going to multiply 2x squared to the 5x. 2 times 5 is 10. X squared times x is x to the 3rd. And then, that 3 looks weird. And then we're going to multiply 2x squared times a negative 1. And that's going to give us 2 times negative 1, which is a negative 2. And then we just have the x squared will bring over. Now we're going to look x to the 4, x to the 3rd, x to the squared. There's no like terms, so our final answer is this answer here. Now we're going to multiply a binomial times a trinomial. So we will distribute the two terms in the binomial. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take 2x and we're going to multiply it to the x squared. So we're going to have 2 times the coefficient here is an understood 1, so 2 times 1 will be 2. X times x squared is x to the 3rd. Now we're going to multiply 2x squared times negative 7x. 2 times negative 7 is a negative 14. X times x is x squared. And then we're going to multiply 2x times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and we'll bring down the x. Now we're going to go back and distribute this 1 here in the binomial. So 1 times x squared will be x squared. 1 times negative 7x will be negative 7x. And then 1 times 2 will be a positive 2. Now when you look, notice we have some like terms. So we have this negative 14x squared and a positive x squared we can combine. And we also have this 4x and a negative 7x that we can combine. So we'll bring down our 2x cubed, and we'll combine negative 14 x squared and the x squared. So negative 14 plus, this is an understood 1, is going to be negative 13 x squared. And we're going to combine the 4x and the negative 7x to get a negative 3x. And then we bring down our plus 2. Now keep in mind when you're doing this, think of order of operations. You will always multiply before adding and subtracting. So what we did is we distributed first. So we multiplied to get this polynomial here. Now we added and subtracted terms to get the final answer. And remember, in addition and subtraction, you're combining like terms. So the terms stay like they are. So the exponents do not change. So this next group is multiplying two binomials. So in this case, it's a binomial times a binomial, and we're going to use a special saying called FOIL, which means first, outer, inner, last. So what we'll do, all FOIL is the distributor property. So when we say multiplying, we're going to say x times x. So if you're distributing, think x times x. Now, x and x are the first terms in the binomial. So I'm just going to label this f. So your first times first is x squared. When you're distributing, you would do the x and the -5. Well, these two terms are what are called the outer terms because they're on the outside. So the outer terms would be a -5x. Now when you're thinking about distributing, you got to come back to the 7 and you've got to distribute it to the x. Well, if we name those two terms are on the inside. So that would be a positive 7x. But if I think about distributing, I've got to come back and do 7 and -5, which those two terms are the last two terms, and we get a -35. So we have multiplied. Now we want to see, can we add or subtract? To add or subtract, we have to have like terms. If you look, these two terms are like because they're both x. So we're going to bring down x squared. We're going to combine -5x and 7 to get a positive 2x. And then we're going to bring down the -35, and that is our final answer. So the next example, let's just, instead of saying distributing, let's think about FOIL. So first times first would be 4x squared. Outer times outer would be -4x. Inner times inner is -9x. And last times last will be a positive 9. Be sure to watch your signs because when you're multiplying, you're thinking about your signs. So a negative times a negative makes that a positive. All right, so we have these two are like terms. So we're going to bring down 4x squared. We're going to combine -4x and -9x to get a -13x, and then bring down our plus 9. In this next set, we're going to talk about a special case called conjugates. Conjugates are two binomials that have the same terms but different signs. So if you look at this first example, notice that both of these terms, they both have an x and a 3. The only difference is one's a positive and one's a negative. We will use FOIL. Sorry, that was my cat that decided to jump up. We're going to use FOIL, so we're going to multiply first times first. We're going to multiply the outer times the outer. We're going to multiply inner times inner. And we're going to multiply last times last. And when we look at these middle terms and combine them, notice what's going to happen here. They're going to cancel out. So when we look, it says the special thing about this is if conjugates, the middle terms are going to cancel out. And what we end up with here is a binomial. Let me go back to these up here. Notice binomial and a binomial. We had a trinomial and a trinomial. But in this case, this conjugates, because the middle terms cancel, we ended up with, instead of a trinomial, we ended up with this binomial. When we get to factoring, this is going to be a special type of when we factor, we're going to look for special cases like this. And this is what's called a difference of two squares. So when we multiply this out, FOIL in, we get 4x squared. All right, the outer terms, we get -14x. The inner terms, we get a positive 14x. And then the last terms, we get a -49. Look what happens. Those cancel. So we end up with the binomial again. And again, this binomial is called a difference of two squares. All right, the last case here is another special case. It's called perfect square binomials. And the product, remember product is the answer when you're multiplying, is what's called a perfect square trinomial. Now when you look at this the biggest mistake students make is to think, okay, well, I got that's squared, so that means I'm going to square the 4x to get 16x squared, and I'll square the 1, and then that's my answer. That is wrong. Think about exponents. What that exponent, that 2 means that you have 2 of these binomials. So that means we have 2 of these binomials. So what we've got to do is write it out twice, and then we can FOIL it out. So first times first, outer times outer, inner times inner, and then last times last. Now, don't, or be careful here, because I see this all the time. I'll have students say, oh, okay, well, these middle terms are going to cancel out. They are not going to cancel out. Are those signs different? No. That is a negative 4x and a negative 4x. So same sign means, when in addition, same sign means we're going to add those 2 terms together and keep the sign. So notice that we end up with that trinomial here. So we'll do the same thing over here. We'll write it out twice. All right, we'll FOIL it out. So first times first is x squared. Outer times outer is 5x. Inner times inner is 5x. Last times last is 25. We're going to combine those. Notice they're not going to cancel. We're going to add, so that's going to be a positive 10x plus 25. Now, there is a shortcut that I will show for those that can pick it up easily. I know in college algebra we use this shortcut quite a bit. Instead of having to write it out twice like we did here and here, the shortcut says that I can take the binomial, so let me write it out like this. So let's say that we labeled the binomial A and B, or the terms in there, A and B. So the shortcut says that whatever A is, we can square it. Then to get the middle term, what we can do is we can multiply A and B together and double it. And then to get the last term, we take whatever it is and we square it. So when you look at 4x minus 1, this is the A, this is the B. So you're taking 4x, all right, you're going to square it. Then you're saying 2 times, if you multiply A and B together, you're multiplying, so that would be a negative 4x. And then you're taking that, that last term and squaring it. So you would get 16x squared minus 8x plus 1, which is what we got here at the top. You know, same thing if I use the shortcut x plus 5 squared. I'm going to square this one. I'm going to multiply x and 5x, and I'm going to double it. So I get 10x. And then I'm going to square the 5 to get 25. All right, class, thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, let me know.